Hello, this is Taylor Ellwood with Magical Experiments, and I'm doing my latest video here on an exploration of journey into sacred masculinity. Um, Day early, I have the day off, so why not? And it's kind of interesting. This has been this topic of fear is, I think, directly relevant to the human experience. Anyone who's a human being will experience fear. So, you might wonder then, well, why are you doing this in regards to masculinity, Taylor? I mean, what's the difference? Everyone experiences fear. Well, that's true. And I can't presume to speak to how other people experience fear. I can really only speak to my own experiences and acknowledge that as well. But I do think that what I have observed about myself and other men and what I've been reading about in the last 6 months is really kind of helped me to start understanding my relationship with fear a little bit differently in regards to being a man and how that has played a role in my life and what I need to change about it, what I'm trying to change about it. I don't know that I'm always doing a good job of it, but I'm trying. Because fear is a primal part of our lives. It's always going to be a part of our lives. You can't get rid of fear, and nor should you. Fear has its place, in the grand scheme of things. But sometimes it's not always as helpful as you'd like it to be. Now, if you're watching this video and you're a new subscriber or new person here, feel free to click the subscribe button and the bell notification. And if you're a frequent flyer, I hope you like it, and feel free to comment if you feel motivated and inspired. So, fear. So I've been doing a lot of work with Saturn, and I think that Saturn as a Titan and as the planetary energy, it is definitely an embodiment of fear. In some ways, Saturn as the devourer is the express, where he devours his children because he's afraid of them. He's afraid of being deposed. Is a good example of someone acting out of fear and letting that fear control them. And ultimately that fear sabotages them. When we look at the astrological significance of Saturn, there's a lot of fear around Saturn as a malefic force because it was considered to be the outer planet, and it was the only one that had rings, and it was a planet about boundaries and limitations. And so there was fear around that. I always find it interesting how people have fears around boundaries and limitations, but I know I do too. So this is a heavy topic. So recently I went to a meeting, and that meeting really ended up being helpful for me because it helped me see that I wasn't alone. And the interesting thing is I've written this blog article about kind of my realizations around the sacred masculine, and I had someone respond to it, and she wrote her own post. And one of the things that she made this really interesting point. She said that traditionally men, when they're dealing with their emotions, have turned inward toward themselves to deal with them. And I couldn't disagree with it. I mean, I had to ruefully acknowledge there's a lot of truth to that, because I look at myself and where do I typically go to? I go to myself. That's what you're taught. It's what I was taught. Don't cry. You're supposed to be a I can't tell you how many times I heard that. Don't cry. You're supposed to be a boy. You're supposed to be a man. Or, boys don't cry, right? What I learned as a kid was to turn my emotions inward. I wasn't allowed to express them. I wasn't allowed to express the rage or the anger or anything that I felt. So I turned it inward. Became really depressed, amongst other things. But hey, at least I was showing I was a proper boy or a proper man. The problem with that, of course, is it simply doesn't work. You turn it inward, and it inevitably sabotages you. So, reading that article and then reflecting on the meeting that I had and reflecting on some other recent events in my life, I'm like, that's just it, you know. I mean, one of my challenges as a man is being able to express myself when it comes to difficult emotions, and at the same time not letting those emotions take over and control me. And I wish I was better at it than I am. I'm not. I'm not. I know, some people watch these videos and I'll hear at some point, oh, you seem so aware. What I always want to say to people like that is that awareness has come at such a high cost at times. I'm not saying that out of pity. It's just the truth. You don't get to be this aware without making some mistakes, and I'm not as aware as people might think that I am. I'm working on that awareness. I really am. I am. The last 6 months has been a particularly, really even more than that, but it's been a particularly interesting journey around awareness and attachment, because I think that fears are wrapped up in attachment. They get locked into attachment, and a lot of times we get attached to different things. People think of attachments in terms of, like, from what I can tell, a lot of times when we think of attachments, we think of attachments in like a way like, like you're attached to this person or you're attached to that. But I would argue sometimes we're attached to our traumas. Sometimes we're attached to the pain of our life. I know I've been attached to that sometimes in different ways, and I've let it get in the way of some really good things. And what I've done is I've turned inward, and I haven't dealt with it in a healthy way. I, and I've gotten better about this to some degree. I've gotten better about expressing some of these things, but in the moment, I still tend to freeze. I freeze up. And I don't always know how to just open up and connect. And that is not a good thing, you know? You and I mean, I guess I would say that, it's it's easy. It's easy to look back on something with hindsight and say, okay, if I had done X, if I had done Y, okay, well, I know next time what to do. And that works to some degree. This is why when I make videos like this and people are like, oh, you're so aware, like, I'm looking back on things and I'm looking back and I'm talking about those things. But in the moment, Was I that aware? No. In the moment, I may have been attached to specific things that kept me from really being truly present in the moment. And that in and of itself is just, I think it's a challenge most anyone picks up. But it's a challenge I'm finding as I'm reaching out and starting to connect more with other men. It's a challenge I'm noticing with my interactions with those other men. And I'll admit that it's a challenge I see with myself. Men in some ways have been socialized to not even really reach out and connect with each other. In No More Mr. Nice Guy, Robert Glover talks about this a lot, how a lot of quote unquote nice guys don't have a lot of male friends. And I'm definitely one of those quote unquote nice guys. I'm working on changing that. I'm getting better about it in some ways. I feel like I'm in this really interesting period in my life right now where I'm having to stretch painfully in some ways. And I'm realizing that in order to do that, I have to be willing to change my relationship with fear. For me, going to the meeting I went to recently was really empowering because it was a conscious choice on my part to put myself out there and be vulnerable and to see a similar vulnerability as well shared, and I realized how much that was needed. So I'm on this journey to sacred masculinity, and I definitely don't feel like I embody the sacred masculine right now in my life. I don't feel like or the divine masculine. I've seen that term used too. I don't feel like I embody it right now. Maybe I'm in touch with aspects of it, maybe not. In a lot of ways, I feel like I'm a very immature person. I'm not saying that from a place of judgment. Well, maybe I am, maybe a bit. It's more like you start to see certain patterns and you're like, I don't like the way this causes me to show up. I don't like the way that I'm appearing with myself and with other people. And so, one of my fears is really around, how do I confront this? How do I work with this? How do I change it? And I'm realizing I can't do it alone. And this is something that a lot of men have been taught. We've been taught to white knuckle it, to go alone. I was basically a loner as a kid. I didn't have a lot of friends. And I white knuckled my way through that, and I white knuckled my way through a lot of my life. But the problem is like when you're white knuckling all the time, you're in a place of, consistent stress and tension, and you're locking yourself up. Now, over the years, I've been learning. I've learned to do internal work. I've learned to release a lot of that tension and stress, and I'm not white knuckling things as much as I was. But the one thing that really stands out to me, and this is really, really crucial, is that I have to learn how to let other people in and trust them. And I don't mean like this. I mean, a video like this is nice, it's me talking and everything else. But at the end of the day, it's not quite the same. Now, I've done some of this on Facebook too, where I'll share stuff and things, but I'm beginning to really, but there I'm beginning to be a lot more private in a lot of ways. It may not seem like it, but I really am. And part of that is because I'm thinking to myself, like, who am I really sharing this with? And how much do they really need to see my ass exposed to the wind, getting chaffed and shaped? uh, so I think, it it boils down to, how do you really want to show up? You have to find the people that you can connect with on a meaningful way. And I don't think you can do that solely from a virtual environment. You have to learn how to connect with people more meaningfully. And so going, to the meeting last night, I don't know if I'll see those people again. I am pursuing other meetings, mind you. But I might not see those same people. But still, I connected with them. And I connected with them in a raw and real way. And they connected with me in that same way. And I think for if a man is to transform his relationship with fear, really transform his relationship with emotions in general, he's got to learn how to transform himself. But not just by going inward. He's got to learn how to reach out to other people and connect with them in a meaningful way. And that can't happen unless he's willing to let down some of those walls. Now, I've gotten good at letting some of those walls down, but I still have others to let down. And I've come to realize as well how much I'm still unpacking from the last few years. And I haven't even begun to give myself that space. So this journey to sacred masculinity is very timely because I was saying to my roommate in the car the other day, I'm like, I have this opportunity right now in my life to reinvent myself completely. And I've done some of it. I moved to a new city. I got a home. I've got a job. I'm doing my writing and all that, and that's great. What I'm not doing though as much, or what I haven't been doing as much, is I've been starting to do it. I mean, the last 6 months was really it's been kind of the thing. I've been like, okay, who do I want to really be? Who do I want to be as a man? Who do I want to be as a person? These are the things that I'm thinking a lot about as I explore my relationship with myself, but also in context to other people and how I relate and connect to those other people. I don't know where this journey is going to take me, and I don't know who I'm going to become. But that's okay. That's part of the thrill of a journey. If you knew the outcome, would you do it? I do know I do know that I want to be better. I want to be a better person. I want to transform who I am and the way I show up in life. I just know I can't do it alone. And I've been doing it alone for so long. One of my biggest failings in my life has been that I have not reached out to people, to other people, when I've needed help as much as I could have. I haven't, and I haven't necessarily had the kind of support I would have liked as a result. And I haven't been able to show up and support other people in that way either then. So I think, right now, I'm looking at myself and I'm like, what do I have to show for myself? Here I am, I'm at 46, and I have some good people in my life I care about and who care about me. But in a lot of ways, I feel very alone. And part of me's been afraid to be alone, which is ironic, going it alone, everything else, but it's not. I mean, you have this fear, right? And this is a good example of how fear can really damage things for you. And this is this whole journey to the sacred masculine for me is seeing this. I've gone it alone, and I've had my fears get in the way of really connecting with people, and yet at the same time, ironically enough, I'm afraid to be alone. But what am I really enabling for myself with any of that? The answer for me has been a realization that if I have the opportunity to reinvent my life the way I want it to be, and if I know that I ultimately in the end don't want to be alone, I want to share this journey of life with special people, friends, lovers, whatever else. I owe it to myself and to any people in my life, or any people that might come into my life, to figure these things out. I should have been on this journey last year at this time. I wasn't. I rebounded. I got divorced in April of 2021. And within 4 months, I had rebounded into another relationship. Woohoo! And that rebound, it was a distraction in some ways. I wasn't ready for what I wanted it to be. And because I hadn't done the work. I hadn't done the work on myself. And I hadn't found the resources. Because doing this work on yourself can only go so far when you are alone with yourself. It's at a certain point, you have to be willing, you have to find the people that you can do the work with. And I think a lot of times when we look at doing this kind of work, we think of this in terms of partnership. Like we'll find that person to do the work with, one person. But I think there's a problem with that too. It puts a lot of pressure on that relationship. You meet somebody, and if they're willing to do the work, Hey, great. So you meet somebody, they're willing to do the work. That in and of itself can be a great thing. But I'm realizing, what I realized this week as a result of that meeting, and it really just stood out to me, was, you know, it is possible to not limit yourself to just doing this work with one person. You can do this work with other people too. And that it may be one of the healthiest things of all in your life to be able to reach out and connect with multiple people and have a level of accountability with other people that consequently strengthens your core relationships, because you have other people to turn to, people who aren't exactly in your situation but can identify with it and recognize it. And I think, wow, that is part of what fear that is part of what my relationship with fear has been teaching me, is like how much fear has held me back from connecting with other people, sometimes in a more meaningful way. Like I can be very vulnerable and raw and things like that sometimes. But what do you do in the moment when you have it occurring? It's easy to be raw and vulnerable after the fact, after you've frozen up. What about being raw and vulnerable in the moment as things are occurring? That's the challenge. That's the thing that I'm recognizing I need to work on. And I'm partway there. I'm not hopeless. I just have a ways to go. As do we all. I'm not pretending that I have this figured out by any means, because I don't. But I'm figuring it out slowly, surely. And what I realized is that until I figure some of these things out, I owe it to myself to really double down on this journey. Now, I'm probably not going to do another one of these videos in this series for a little while yet. I did part 1, I did part 2. I'll do others as I continue on this journey, but I want to actually give myself some time to be on this journey. But what I will say, and it'll be interesting for me, I think, to look back on this at some point and be like, yeah, that's where I was. What I will say is that you can't really be in relationship with other people if you're not willing, to open up and let down the walls. And when we have these walls come up in our lives, these walls of trauma, these walls of pain, these walls of things, and let me be very clear here too. When I talk about it, it's not just walls of trauma in relationships, like things that have happened to me. It's also, what have I done? What are the things that I've done? So it's walls of shame too. All these things. Those walls, you got to learn how to thaw them, open up, connect. And that's really where I'm at. I've got to connect more meaningfully with myself, with other people. But finding the right format to do that in, finding it in a way where I'm also discovering my relationship with myself is important too. And I think part of the journey of for me as a man is that I really am in this process of rediscovering who I am in the wake of events that have happened in my life due to things I've done, due to things that have been done, you know. And I can't say, I can't say like, oh, like I didn't get here just because of what other people did, you know. I got to where I'm at because of things I've done. Some of those things have been good things, and some of those things have not been good things. I don't say any of that with a place of judgment because, I mean, just it is what it is. And I think a huge part of my work with fear has been learning to accept that it is what it is. Learning to accept, where I'm at without placing judgment on myself. That is something I have not historically been good at. I used to punish myself so much for things and be so hard on myself. And in the last couple months in particular, because of some really good books I've read around awareness, I've been recognizing how attached I've been in the past to that punishing of myself. And it doesn't work. It just strengthens the trauma. It strengthens the walls. So I'm not doing that as much. I'm not going to say it's altogether gone, but I'm not punishing myself as much because it doesn't really work. Hasn't helped me, isn't helping anyone else. That's kind of where I'm at on my journey to the sacred masculine. I'm in this place right now where I'm really discovering my relationship with fear. And I'm doing the self-love work too, and that's helping. But I think one of the biggest acts of self-love that I'm giving myself right now is the choice to really see where I'm stuck and to get some help. And I'm thinking about making some other changes too. I haven't decided for sure yet on one of those changes, but I've been thinking about it because I'm kind of reviewing my history around it. I'll just tell you, I'm thinking about my relationship with alcohol, actually. I'm not like a hardcore drinker or anything like that, but my dad was an alcoholic. And I don't know, when I drink, my filters come down. And I don't want that to be the reason why my filters come down, That's a crutch. And at the same time, I don't want it to come down in an inappropriate way. And that's happened in the past. So I'm really reviewing that and deciding, do I even want to continue to drink? I mean, I like wine and beer. I don't have to drink it every day. I don't drink it every day. But I'm really considering, the context. Is this something I really need in my life? And part of that's been inspired by reading something someone else wrote on Facebook. So we'll see. In any case, next video isn't going to be on the sacred masculine. It'll be something else. But this is where I'm at with the sacred masculine and kind of the things that I'm doing around fear and some of the steps that I'm taking. And we'll see where it takes me. I'll keep you guys updated.